The year is 1912. The Republican Party is finding its way into the Coliseum of Chicago as they are here to choose their president. Two forces are at work here: the old guard conservative Republicans and the new wave progressives that have come to dominate both Republican and Democratic politics. The showdown begins in the hot, sweltering sun in the Windy City. On one side, the candidate is the president, William Howard Taft, who had served 4 years upholding some progressive policies but faithful to big business. Of course, Taft is not seen as a very much of an electric politician. That, guys, is of course given to Theodore Roosevelt, former president who has thrown his hat back into the ring after 4 years off and despising how his former best friend has abandoned several progressive policies. These two are both fighting, of course, to attack the crown and defeat the challenger of Woodrow Wilson, New Jersey governor, and proposing several radical progressive agendas for the nation. Of course, he has the backing of the solid South behind him, but the true draw is who can win the Republican nomination. The stage is set, but Roosevelt has one trick up his sleeve. Arriving at the convention, he begins speaking from the floor in the middle of speeches. He goes on to say, "Now I'm just a voice among the crowd, but let me be heard out." His passion and his speaking style sway the convention as the party bosses frantically try to counter. It's too late. Roosevelt wins the nomination for the Republican Party. This, of course, goes on to 1912, where a united labor vote and a united Republican vote sweeps the North, the Midwest, and the West, going across the Plain States and winning the election for Roosevelt. Roosevelt, for the first time in American history, is elected as a third term president. Of course, the Solid South stays behind with Wilson, but it's not enough to unseat the Bull Moose. As we go on through the time of Roosevelt's presidency, Roosevelt, ever the visionary, looks to foreign affairs as he looks for a stronger hold on the life of the people of the North and South America. Roosevelt continues to expand U.S. policies into especially the Caribbean states as he sends U.S. troops to uphold friendly American governments in both Haiti and Cuba, as well as into Central America. This begins a massive conflict with Mexico as Mexican soldiers resent American interference, which of course leads to the sending of U.S. Marines to Veracruz by Theodore Roosevelt. This angers and upsets many international speakers, but Roosevelt, ever the realist, knows this brings great popularity on the domestic front. Mexico continues to be bolstered by American forces and occupied in several cities, and brings it closer and closer under the thumb of the American Bull Moose president. However, world events will continue to shape. By the summer of 1914, Europe is at war along with the rest of the world. Roosevelt at first recognizes the challenge and threat this war could face, but he sees no reason for the United States to get involved. His anti German sentiments lead to him being a more pro Allied, pro British, and sending supplies as best as he could, ignoring German appeals for trade. The United States is an ally in name, in all practical sense of the word. As World War I continues, German patrols in the Atlantic increase. Roosevelt, despite cries from pacifists like William Jennings Bryan or Woodrow Wilson, decides to call in and muster the nation as men sign up and volunteer to form the new American Army under the command of several new and inexperienced soldiers, but would go on to do great things such as Douglas MacArthur and George Patton. Roosevelt trains this army in several camps throughout the United States, as well as bolstering the naval presence throughout the North Atlantic, protecting convoys of American troops and American supplies. However, not all convoys can protect every ship. As by 1915, the British passenger ship, the Lusitania, is sunk by a German torpedo. Not only was it carrying American supplies, it was also carrying American lives. Murder on the high seas, Roosevelt declares. But he goes short of declaring war, instead, sending an increased flotilla of American ships in order to safely patrol the North Atlantic waters. Allied equipment increases, helping them win several key battles. During this time, Roosevelt runs for re-election. He knows that during a crisis like this, Americans will not abandon their sitting president. And indeed, Roosevelt is re-elected. However, it is by a smaller majority, as the Democrats continue to make gains in the populist forces. As Roosevelt looks to the West, he knows that the inevitable cannot be held. And by 1917, issues a declaration of war on the German Empire. American forces are sent immediately following these convoys and begin to fight along the sides of Belgian, French, and British troops throughout the Western Front. American forces face heavy casualties. However, the massive influx of American troops gives pause to the Russian Empire from leaving the war, as well as fighting. And as the war ends, a tragedy befalls the United States as Roosevelt dies without having first named his successor. The nation mourns as their four-time president passes away from a heart attack. This, of course, leads the nation with only a leader known as Charles Evans Hughes, an American conservative who was chosen in 1916 to placate the conservatives of the Republican Party. President Hughes is able to end the war with the United States in Allied victory. However, it is not a complete victory, as war weariness on both sides leads to an armistice. But of course, none of this actually happened. Roosevelt did not speak in the 1912 election. Instead, he lost the nomination to William Howard Taft. But what the scenario shows is that even if great men switch places in history, sometimes events are so important and so monumental that they are shaped regardless. The old saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same.